Owen didn't want to write horror stories anymore. Not because they frightened him, but because lately, they didn't. He'd grown numb to the dread, the tension, the twist endings. His agent called it burnout. He called it something worse, hollowing. The boarding house was quiet. Too quiet. Just what he thought he needed. 3 floors. 8 tenants. All of them kept to themselves. The landlady, Mrs. Holcomb, was a wiry woman with eyes that seemed to be listening. She handed him the key without a smile. 2nd floor, 3rd door on the right. Don't mind the one at the end. It hasn't opened in years. That was the first time he heard about the door. His room was small, creaky, and smelled faintly of mothballs and antique books. But it was perfect. He unpacked his notebooks, sat at the desk, and stared at the blank page. That's when he noticed the hallway. The 3rd door on the right. Then another. And at the very end, almost flush with the wall, a door painted the same color as the plaster. Faded. Obscure. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it entirely. It had no knob. Only a keyhole. The landlady hadn't mentioned a key. That night, Owen dreamed of typewriter clicks and whispers behind drywall. Of something pacing slowly, barefoot, inside the walls. When he woke, the door at the end seemed closer. Not literally. But it felt closer. As if it had leaned in while he slept, curious. He shook it off. Wrote 2 pages. Made coffee. The second night, he heard the creak. It came at exactly 3 a.m. A long, slow groan from the hallway, like someone shifting their weight behind the far door. He sat up, heart thudding. But he wasn't scared. Just aware. Fully, unsettlingly aware. He walked into the hallway. The wallpaper pulsed faintly in the dark, old roses outlined in shadows. The door at the end of the hallway seemed to shimmer under the bulb's dying light. He walked toward it. Each step felt louder than it should. The air grew colder. He placed his hand on the door. Nothing. It was smooth and cold, like touching a mirror. He leaned in. Just slightly. And felt something press back. Owen jerked his hand away. His room door slammed shut behind him. The hallway went dark. When he turned, the door at the end was gone. Just wall. The next morning, he asked Mrs. Holcomb about it. The one at the end, she said, frowning. There is no door at the end. I saw it, he insisted. You must be tired, she replied. Later that day, he sketched the hallway. Drew the door. Not from memory, but from need, as if proving it made it real. That night, the sketch was gone. In its place, a slip of paper, "You're not supposed to look." Owen didn't write that. The door returned on the 3rd night. This time, it had a crack running down the middle. As if something inside had pressed too hard. Owen couldn't stop staring at the crack. It wasn't there the day before. The door at the end of the hallway had always been seamless, blank as if forgotten by time itself. But now a hairline fracture traced from top to bottom, like the door had breathed once, deeply, and something inside had exhaled too hard. He tried to forget it. He buried himself in old notebooks, turned on music, opened all the curtains, but the air in his room had changed. It wasn't cold. Not exactly. It watched. That was the only word for it. He started whispering to himself when he wrote. Not because he was going mad, but because the silence felt too heavy. He needed to puncture it. Push back. It didn't help. That night, the door opened. Not all the way, just a whisper. Enough to let something through. He didn't see it at first. He heard it. Click. 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 Not footsteps. Not metal. Something more like the tick of an old watch, but slower. Uneven. He pressed his ear to his door. Silence. Then, breathing. His own no. It was off rhythm, not syncing with his chest. A second breath, just on the other side of the door. He flung it open. The hallway was empty. Except. The end was different. No longer flat wall. The door stood open. Wide. Waiting. No crack now. Only darkness. And warmth. Not comforting warmth. The kind of heat you feel in the back of a closet where no air has moved in years. He stepped closer. The hallway stretched as he walked. The door seemed farther away with each step. The wallpaper on the walls began to change. The flowers twisted into spirals, then into eyes, then into letters he couldn't read. He reached the door frame. No hinges. Just a hole. The room beyond it didn't belong to the boarding house. It belonged to him. Literally. Owen's bedroom was inside. His desk. His chair. Even his cup of cold coffee from earlier that day still half full, in the exact same position. He stepped in. A perfect copy. But it wasn't he. The windows showed no view. Just black. No stars. No moon. Just, motionless nothing. He turned back. The hallway was gone. Only wall. As if the door had never been there. Panic rose, but only for a moment. Then, the quiet took over. Stillness so pure it pressed against his chest. He sat down at the desk. The paper on it was blank. He reached for the pen, but it wasn't a pen. It was a key. He recognized it instantly. The key to the door at the end. He picked it up and the light in the room dimmed. Not the bulb. Not the lamp. But the light itself. The idea of illumination receded, like the shadows were reclaiming their dead. Owen stood up. The room groaned. That was the only word he had for it, like an old man shifting in bed, annoyed to be disturbed. The door behind him was back. Only it no longer led to the hallway. It led to a staircase. Spiraling. Stone walls. Too narrow for comfort. He should have left. He should have run into the black and screamed until someone, anyone, heard him. Instead, he walked forward. The walls tightened with each step. He couldn't see the bottom or the top. But the air grew heavier. And the sound returned. Click. Click. Tick. Tick. Heartbeat no. Typewriter. He recognized it now. The same one he used when he was 16, before everything went digital. Before the world got loud. The steps ended in a small chamber. A desk sat in the center. Old. Wooden. Covered in dust. A single lamp shone above it, swinging slowly, casting long shadows like pendulums. On the desk, the typewriter. His. Even had the chipped space bar. The paper loaded in it had words. Just 3. We remember you. He stepped back. A voice whispered behind him. You left us unfinished. He turned. Nobody. The wall was smooth. Then letters began to rise from it, etched in real time. Not carved. Grown. Your words built us. Now finish what you started. The typewriter clicked once, unaided. The carriage moved. The keys depressed. A single letter appeared on the page. Then another. Then a word. Sit. He did. His hands moved. Not against his will, but with familiarity. His fingers typed a sentence before he could think. The door at the end of the hallway was never meant to be opened. The lamp above flickered. The room breathed. Walls pulsed like lungs. And for a moment, Owen felt something inside the room lean closer. Not a person. Not a ghost. A place. A memory. He had dreamed of this place when he was young. Not this exact one, but one just like it. A room that changed to fit what you needed. Or feared. He stood again. Turned toward the wall. Another door had appeared. Carved in the shape of his childhood bedroom. His bunk bed. His books. The night light that never worked. The fear he used to feel at night. This place knew him. And it wanted him to stay. Back in the real world, if it was still real. The hallway returned. Owen stumbled out, gasping. It was dawn. His door was still ajar. His coffee untouched. No one else in the building stirred. But as he entered his real room, he saw something on the desk. Not a note. Not a warning. A gift. The same key. Only now, it was warm. Owen locked the key in his drawer. He didn't trust himself with it. But that didn't matter, because by the third day, he realized something awful: the door no longer needed the key. Each night at 3 a.m. it was open. Waiting. Sometimes just a crack. Other times wide enough for the air to spill out, heavy, dry, and full of the scent of forgotten wood and static. Worse still, the house began to notice him noticing. Creaks echoed where there were no footsteps. Voices murmured just low enough to question his sanity. And always, the feeling returned: something was listening. Not from inside the room anymore. From the walls. From beneath the floorboards. From behind the mirrors. On the fourth night, Owen awoke to a sound he hadn't heard since childhood. A soft knock. But not at his door. From inside his closet. He lay there, frozen. The knock came again. 3 times. Even. Calm. Almost polite. He rose slowly, heart tight in his chest. He didn't open the closet. Not yet. Instead, he spoke. Who's there? No answer. Then softly, right behind him. We're still reading. He turned so fast he stumbled into the wall. The room was empty. Except for his desk. Where the typewriter now sat. He hadn't brought it back from the room. But there it was, keys gleaming in the low light. Paper ready. Typed in clean black ink: you wrote us once. You can write us again. He tore the sheet out. Crushed it. Threw the machine into the closet and slammed the door. The knock returned an hour later. From inside the walls. The landlady didn't ask him how he was when they passed in the hallway that morning. She just looked tired. Pale. Her eyes darted toward the end of the corridor and quickly back. You hear things at night? Owen asked. She nodded. Ignore them, she said. But. I said ignore them. She walked away. But before she disappeared around the stairwell, she added softly, if it speaks to you again, don't answer. That night, Owen wore headphones. He blasted static. White noise. Anything to keep the whispers out. But even then, they found cracks. Not through sound but sensation. His bed shifted. The wallpaper curled at the edges. And worst of all, he began to dream with his eyes open. He saw things in the reflection of the window glass. Himself. Writing. Smiling. But not moving. Like a paused video of a version of him who'd chosen the room. The other Owen. And sometimes, that Owen looked up at him. As if he were the ghost. On the 7th day, he left. Tried, at least. He packed a bag, booked a bus, and walked straight out the door. No drama. No horror. Just the sound of gravel under his boots as he stepped away. The house didn't chase him. Didn't scream. Didn't collapse. He almost laughed. Maybe it really was in his head. He reached the stop. The bus rolled up. He stepped on, nodded to the driver, and sat near the back. Then he blinked. And when his eyes opened, he was back in his room. Unpacked. Sitting at the desk. The key on the paper in front of him, and the words, "You didn't even say goodbye." He screamed. Loud. Angry. Every curse he knew thrown at the walls, the floor, the mirror. Then he grabbed the key. If it wanted him so badly it could have him. He marched to the door at the end of the hallway. It opened before he reached it. This time, it led not to his room but to a long, narrow corridor of black glass. Reflections on both sides. All of him. But older. Tired. Smiling. Sometimes, not blinking when he did. He walked. The glass whispered. You dreamed of us before the first sentence. You made us with your fear. You fed us with every forgotten draft. He reached the end. A single chair. Facing a desk. Facing a mirror. Only in the mirror he wasn't sitting. He was standing behind himself. Staring. Waiting. He sat. The chair creaked. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Until the reflection smiled and whispered, "Now let us begin again." The chair beneath Owen felt different now, warmer, somehow, as if someone else had been sitting in it only moments before. The mirror in front of him no longer showed a reflection. Not his, at least. Instead, it showed another version of the room. One that was cleaner. Brighter. A window that let in real light. Books stacked neatly. A coffee mug still steaming. And the figure sitting at the desk looked just like him. Except it wasn't him. Not exactly. It wore his face, but its eyes didn't move. Its fingers typed without pause. Its mouth opened now and then, as if reciting something only it could hear. Owen leaned closer. So did the version of him in the mirror. But its smile was wider. Wrong. He tried to look away, but his head wouldn't turn. The mirror hummed. Not like electricity. More like breath against glass. Words began to appear on the surface, fogged out from nowhere. Let us fix what you abandoned. Then came the sound. A deep, wooden click, like a coffin lid shifting slightly open. And then paper. Sheets, endless sheets, began sliding from under the mirror. Pale, yellowed, curling at the edges like old skin. Each page bore his handwriting. Stories he started and never finished. Half-plots. Scribbled outlines. Forgotten characters. Abandoned worlds. They spilled onto the desk. Onto the floor. Onto his lap. The air grew heavy with ink and dust and silence. Then, the lights went out. All of them. The room didn't go black. It went unreal. Owen stood in a space not made of walls, but memory. Ideas. Echoes of things he'd written and forgotten. Hallways shaped like sentences. Doors that opened into metaphors. The air was thick with the weight of stories never told. From somewhere within that emptiness came a voice not menacing. Worse. Familiar. I remember when you used to believe in us. It was his own voice. A version of him from 10 years ago, full of ambition and fear and hope. Then another voice layered over it. Lower. Older. Disappointed. We built rooms for you. You never even knocked. Shapes moved in the dark. Shadows of characters he'd left behind. A girl with no name, reaching out from a story he'd scrapped in college. A man with stitched lips, meant for a thriller he never finished. A cat with glowing eyes, once part of a children's fable, now stretched too tall and too still. They didn't move toward him. They waited. Accusing. He ran. Through doors that opened into impossible spaces. A library made of teeth. A theater of whispering chairs. A hallway of clocks, all ticking out of sync, counting down to a moment he couldn't remember. At the end of it all, a single page floated in the air. Blank. Waiting. He reached for it. And the second his fingers touched it he was back in the chair. Desk before him. Mirror shattered. Only shards now, each reflecting a different version of himself. One smiling. One crying. One screaming, though silently. And one just watching. The typewriter was back. New sheet loaded, his hands, unbidden, began to type. He stayed in the house because the house remembered him. Better than he remembered himself. He tried to stop. Tried to pull his hands away. But the room pulsed when he resisted. Lights flickered. Walls shivered. The mirror fragments vibrated on the desk. Then a key on the typewriter jammed. The whole machine jolted. And something slipped out from beneath it. A photograph. One he had never taken. Of himself. Standing in front of the boarding house. Smiling. But his eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too still. Written on the back in looping script, "You came here to be finished." The floor beneath him shifted again. Not cracking. Rewriting. He looked down. Words etched into the wood in real time. Once you enter the story, you don't leave. You become part of the setting. He stood, hard hammering. Tried the door. It opened to the boarding house hallway. But everything was reversed. Left was right. Right was left. And all the doors were open now. Inside each room more of him. Variations. Some typing. Some staring at walls. Some with eyes closed, lips mouthing words. And in the silence between them, a sound like pages turning themselves. Back in his room, if it still was his, he found one last thing. A notebook. Blank. Resting gently on his pillow. On the first page, "Finish this. Or it finishes you." He didn't sleep that night. He listened. To the house. To the clicking typewriters behind the walls. To the stories trying to climb their way back into his head. And when the first light of morning slipped through the window, not sunlight, but something colder, he realized the worst truth of all. The house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. Owen didn't open the notebook until the third day. He spent the first two walking in loops around the house, down unfamiliar corridors that curved subtly when he wasn't looking. Doors that used to lead to bathrooms now opened to pitch-black stairwells. The kitchen had no fridge anymore, just a metal sink that dripped ink. And not once, in all that wandering, did he see another soul. Not the landlady. Not the neighbors. Not even himself in the mirrors. They had all stopped reflecting. As if the house had decided he was enough. By the third night, the dreams stopped being dreams. He would close his eyes and still be awake. Lying in bed. Listening. To the floorboards sigh. To pages turn just outside his door. To typewriters click in perfect rhythm. And worst of all, to someone humming a tune he'd never heard before. Low. Soft. A lullaby for unfinished things. When he finally opened the notebook, his hands shook. It wasn't blank. Not anymore. The first page bore the title in his own handwriting, The Room That Waits. Beneath it, a subtitle, A True Account by Owen. He stopped. The last name wasn't his. He couldn't remember ever writing that name. But it looked like his handwriting. And something about it felt right. Familiar, like a dream you don't remember but know was yours. He flipped the page. The story was there. Line for line. Every chapter. Everything that had happened. The mirror. The hallway. The voices. The room. Everything, up to this moment. His breath caught. The final page was unfinished. It ended mid-sentence, and as Owen stood in the last room, the one without walls or ceilings or clocks, he realized what his hands wouldn't move. The pen rested on the desk. The typewriter was gone now. So were the mirror shards. So were the shadows under the bed. Only the notebook remained. Waiting. He walked to the window. The street outside was empty. Cars frozen. Leaves mid-fall, hanging in the air. Time had stopped. The house wasn't part of the world anymore. Or maybe the world wasn't part of him. He closed the notebook. And the room sighed. A deep, satisfied sound. Like a child slipping into sleep. He felt something shift behind him. Turned. There, in the corner where nothing had ever been before, stood a door. No frame. Just black wood, tall and narrow. No knob. No lock. Just a peephole. He stepped closer. Peered in. Inside, he saw something impossible. A room. Bright. Morning sun pouring in. The smell of coffee and paper and new beginnings. And a man, him but older. Content. Writing. At peace. Not trapped. Free. He reached for the door. It opened by itself. The room beyond looked so real. So safe. His foot crossed the threshold. And the door snapped shut. He didn't even scream. Because he knew. He hadn't left. He had only written the ending. Not lived it. And somewhere behind him, in the real room or what was left of it, the notebook flipped shut. Its cover now blank. The pages white again, except for one phrase, inked in a child's careful scrawl across the final sheet, "We remember him." And below it? Who's next? From the street, the boarding house looked the same as ever. Still. Quiet. A light on in one upstairs window. Maybe someone new just moved in. Maybe they're a writer too. Maybe tonight, they'll walk past that strange door at the end of the hall, and stop. And listen. Because the house remembers. And it is always waiting.